But what do you recommend for people when when they start? Because IPM, obviously, it's in the name, integrated pest management. It's a big
Yes,
thing, right?
yes,
So
yes,
how
yeah.
should someone kind of approach? What's a good approachable way for someone to kind of grok this and to get started?
In an indoor tent situation, the first thing you want to do, of course, is start clean, make everything as clean as possible, and sterilize your walls, sterilize your vents. Especially if you've got used equipment that's been handed down by a loving friend who's upgrading, that kind of thing happens a lot. You really, really want to make sure to clean all that stuff thoroughly where anything might be harboring, particularly the microscopic stuff. They're really good at hiding any kind of debris, and things need to be cleaned. And powder mildew spores, which can plague us, will just stick around for a long time. They'll go kind of dormant until they find a perfect climactic condition, and they'll come right back to life again. And oh, here's another thing I want to pass on to people about powder mildew. A lot of people don't realize that powder mildew is one of those somewhat specific kind of illnesses. Okay, so in other words, the powder mildew that affects cannabis, there's only two different. There are several types of powder mildew, but two of them attack cannabis. But those two that attack cannabis attack nothing else. Okay, so if you're growing squash or peppers or whatever, and they have powder mildew, that powder mildew will not move your
Okay.
cannabis. It's a different kind of powder mildew that attacks the squashes and the peppers and the what have you.
Yeah, I have roses in my yard and they get powdery
Right. So
mildew.
don't worry.
Yeah,
Their powder mildew is not the same as the cannabis one.
that's interesting.
Now, so whatever powder mildew you got from your cannabis, it's come from, it's floating through the air from your neighbors down the
Right.
road or what have you. It can live for a long time and float for a long time. It can travel on other animals and, etc. It's very durable stuff, but it is specific. So I mean, a lot of people were worried that my squash got, and so now and no, it didn't work that way. That was the whole different type of powdery mildew.
Right.
There really are quite a few different types, and some like it hot, some like it cold, some like it wet, some like it dry. So you can't necessarily assume it's always the same condition that will trigger them either. So it's another issue with powder mildew in the world, but
Right. So it sounds like we should start by cleaning our space and making sure
very
that's
much.
clean.
Mhm.
Let's say, I don't know. I don't want to assume too much about grow styles because, of course, there's a billion different grow styles. But
Right.
maybe a good way, another thing to kind of mention in this area, and now there's helicopters flying over my house. So there's probably something interesting going on. Um, uh, so a home grower, when they're approaching integrated pest management in their kind of their first starting out, maybe they've got seeds or clones. Um, what do you suggest for that? I'm sure there's a whole bunch of great IPM suggestions for clones in particular, especially
Mhm.
I was literally just at a dispensary. In this particular dispensary, they had a bunch of plants in there today, and I've been there in the past, and sometimes those plants look so sad. And
Oh, I've seen them.
you know what I mean? And you
Seen
also
them
they're
just
right
fall
next to the
over when you
front
pick them up.
door. Yeah, they're right next to the front door as well, so you don't know like what's coming in. So
What's
maybe you could
going
speak to
on?
that about why some of
Yeah.
these things that I'm mentioning are even important, you know?
Yeah, because they are so little, especially when they travel to tiny things. What I like to do is I do use the Dr. Symes on the little clone things, but I use a very tender amount. I use like 1 ounce per gallon of water. So it's really very diluted. When they're very young in that stage, you don't need anything strong. But what you're doing there is basically harassing anything that might possibly want to get started, any kind of nasty sorts of molds and mildews or suppose there was this errant little freaking russet mite that was still there from a cutting of the clone. Sometimes they are. And, they just start reproducing so quickly. Next thing you know, you've got a tray of things that are a foot tall and covered with russet mites, and you begin to
Totally.
cry.
Or spider mites or
It's
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very sad day because,
Yeah.
even the more common mites are microscopic when they're young.
My
It's only
friend
when they
gave me a
become
pepper
adults.
plant last year, and the pepper plant, I think, had some sort of like white flies on
Mm.
it or something like
Oh,
that.
I believe you.
You know what I mean? So it just can happen from any which direction. And even if it
Well,
comes in the
here,
form of a gift, along with a gift,
exactly.
you know?
Exactly. And I've seen electron microscope pictures of a whitefly. So you know how small a whitefly is. And it had broad mites all over it, hanging on like a little kid with, hanging onto his dad's legs. Where
Jeez.
this is how they travel from plant to plant. They're lightweight enough, and the white fly is bigger enough that it picks them up like a bus and moves them to another plant somewhere. And it's such a small thing. It's so easy to miss, as it can get into any space like that. So
Right.
that's why we constantly preach preventative maintenance. This is going to be your best friend. And that's the thing people have the hardest time wrapping their head around, because that means spending money on a problem you might not have.
Right.
But here's the way, what you're doing is spending money to prevent that problem ever occurring. Because normally, if you're doing regular preventative at least once or twice a week, depends on, how bad your situation might be. Sometimes you have a past history where, you've got to be extra vigilant, and sometimes you don't. So, you don't have to go full bore if you don't have a situation. But preventative just keeps the problem from ever happening. I know growers who will be real good about that for a while, then they'll go, I haven't had any problems at all. I'm just going to shine it for a while. And the next thing you know, they're infested. And sure enough, it's just like, well, we could have told you that was going to happen. And, it does make such a difference to be preventative. So regardless whether you're using Dr. Zymes or whatever, prevention.
Thank you so much for watching this video from Cannabuzz. I'm Q Grows, the co-founder at Cannabuzz. Behind me is my dog Josie, and we really appreciate your time today. If you had a great time with this video, or you appreciated the knowledge that was shared, please give it a like. Please share this video or other videos from Cannabuzz with your friends, and definitely do check us out on the web at cannabuzz.app, or search Cannabuzz in the App Store or the Google Play Store and join the Cannabuzz community. We are well over 100,000 community members, and you can even become a supporting member so that you can help make more content and help support this community directly through our Cannabuzz Premium and Associate Producer memberships. That helps support this community directly and helps us keep creating this content. So give us a like, a share, a sign up for Cannabuzz, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks all.